Hi, I'm Allie Hamilton, and I'm so happy to welcome you to the Come As You Are podcast. Every week, we'll be talking about some aspect of healing, usually around childhood wounds and complicated familial relationships. The topics will always coincide with my personal essay of the week, and this will be a place where we can take a deep dive together. I'm so thrilled you've joined me and delighted for you to always come as you are. Hi there. Welcome to our talk this week. The topic is, Are You Mad at Me? And it's all about attachment styles. It's based on the essay that I wrote. And I will say that of all the essays that I've written so far, this is the one that I got the most sort of messages and emails and comments just from people who really related. And I didn't intend necessarily to highlight the pairing that I did when I started the essay, but it's just the way that it went. Attachment styles, there are four. There's really two, but the second one has some subsets. So there's secure attachment, which is the ideal, right? This is when you are in a relationship, whether it is a romantic relationship or it's familial or it's like, really close friend. You're in a relationship with someone who loves relationships and knows how to show up and feels really comfortable and loves the connection and is able to handle conflict and have conversation when things arise, and someone who is comfortable with affection and intimacy and just enjoys that experience of being in a relationship. So generally speaking, people who've done a lot of work around attachment styles believe that so much of what develops for us is based on our experience in infancy, that first year of our lives, how able our primary caregivers were to be there for us and to be responsive. And so, when you are an infant, obviously you're very reliant on the people around you and particularly your primary caregivers. And so when you cry because you don't have language, if there's someone there to feed you or comfort you or change you or just give you, hold you, rock you, you're developing a nice secure attachment there. You have a need, you express the need the only way that you can, and someone comes, right? There are things that happen along the way. You go out into the world and you have relationships with other people, and certainly other things that happen in your childhood can affect your attachment style. But that's generally what the information is around how these things develop in the first place. Anxious attachment, insecure attachment, secure attachment, insecure attachment. So insecure attachment is the second category, but there are subsets there. And so insecure attachment is when, for any number of reasons, and it's not that necessarily your primary caregiver didn't love you with all their heart, it's just sometimes people are more or less capable of showing up. And as someone who, did that twice and knows what the first year is like after you have a baby, it is full on 24/7, it's a lot. And if you as the caregiver don't have a lot of support, it's not easy. And so depending on so many factors, in your primary caregiver's lives at the time that you showed up on their timeline, the time that you showed up in their story, how able they were or were not to be responsive and to be loving and to be patient, and to be consistent, right? Like lots of factors can contribute to how well or not so well that first year of life may have gone. And I'm just emphasizing that because in case it didn't go so well, I want to have empathy here for just the job of parenting and how much it does require of you. And I was very lucky at the time that I had my children. I desperately wanted children. I was 36 when I had my son and 39 when I had my daughter. I was ready. I had all kinds of, life experience and tools, emotional tools, and the ability to regulate my nervous system, and a whole bunch of things that I wouldn't necessarily have had if I'd had my kids 10 years earlier, or 14 years earlier, or whatever. My mother was 24 when she had me. So just understanding these things can help when you are thinking about what is my attachment style, to have some compassion for your caregivers and not necessarily think that they failed. It just might have been difficult depending on all different kinds of circumstances. So if you have an anxious attachment style, that is generally going to manifest itself in your romantic relationships, certainly, but also probably those close relationships in your life, all of them. And what it looks like is a difficulty to feel relaxed, to feel like you can trust the close people in your life. You might find that you're constantly second guessing yourself, you're craving closeness, you need a lot of reassurance, and the way that it can be felt for the people that may be in relationship with you is a certain amount of neediness and a certain amount of just intensity there that may or may not always be welcome. And so that is what I ended up writing about this in the essay this week, was how painful it is. And this is a very common pairing for people. The anxiously attached person having a relationship with the avoidant dismissive attachment style. And that's the next one. So avoidant dismissive is exactly as it sounds. It's someone who does not feel so comfortable with intimacy, with the ability to tolerate closeness, those people tend to run. When someone is coming toward them and is craving closeness, people that have the avoidant dismissive attachment style tend to they don't want to rely on other people. They don't want to have other people rely on them. It's just an uncomfortable experience. When those two folks get together, you can imagine it's pretty painful for the anxiously attached person and also for the avoidant dismissive person, because they're being constantly asked to be close when that is the one thing that really scares them, to show up, to offer intimacy, and that's exactly what makes them want to run. And then I just want to define all of these a little bit before we kind of dive in. The final subset of the insecurely attached style is disorganized or disoriented. It's sometimes called attachment style. And that is also known as like fearful avoidant. And a lot of the time you're going to run into that when you're talking about someone who had a really painful experience trying to attach to the primary caregivers. And it might look like neglect, it might look like abuse, but it's usually a result of that relationship being extremely painful and strained. And there are, again, all kinds of reasons that might happen. I know, for example, like with my mother, I don't think she was so prepared to be like 24/7, dealing with that, with the intense needs of an infant. I think it was really hard for her. Now, she had her mother for support, and for the first almost 4 years of my life, my maternal grandmother died the week before my 4th birthday. And I think that was a big, huge loss for both of us, because I think my mother's main support system suddenly disappeared, and I think it had an impact on both of us and on our relationship together. So those are the styles that we're talking about here. And I want to also say that attachment styles are not set in stone. So, you might be somebody who has an anxious attachment style. I don't want you to be sitting here thinking, oh no, it's like a life sentence. It's not. They're malleable. If, bringing them into your awareness, it's like another lens that you can look through when you're thinking about the close relationships in your life. Just considering attachment styles is another piece of the puzzle that I personally think is incredibly helpful. But if you spend the time recognizing, okay, I think right now, if I look back at my relationships and the way that I usually am in a relationship, if you can identify that you are anxiously attached, I think a lot of people can because of the response to the essay that I wrote. Then it gives you more information about where the healing might still need to happen, where there might be some work left to do so that you can shift. You don't have to always show up in relationships with so much anxiety and so much insecurity and, difficulty extending trust. So these are things that are, for everyone, whatever style you might identify with, right now, or as you're thinking about these things, just to know that that's just how it is right now. And doesn't mean that I can't shift that. So what another piece of the puzzle, and I've talked about this in other podcast episodes, is this idea of the repetition compulsion, or the way that we tend to seek out whatever we didn't gain mastery over as children. And that the repetition compulsion is something that Freud wrote about and, was really surprised by. And I want to say Freud had a lot of really strange ideas as well, but this one is interesting. And a lot of them are really interesting. But the thing that surprised him is that his patients were more driven to repeat old patterns in their present lives to try to get a happy ending than they were to head toward pleasure, like the pleasure principle. The repetition compulsion was stronger than the pleasure principle. And what that means is that, let's say you grew up with a primary caregiver and you felt this person was never available to you for whatever reason, or rarely available, or sometimes available and sometimes not. You're going to seek out partners like that so that you can play that out in your current life and try to get the happy ending you didn't get as a kid. And it almost never works out well because you are unconsciously choosing people who are unavailable and unable to give you that thing that you want the most, which is the experience of secure attachment. That's what you're looking for. But you're going to the hardware store for apples, right? Like you're picking people that are not going to be able to give you what you most desire. And so when you have all of this information, working in your mind, and you can really think about, okay, what is my attachment style, and what are these old wounds that I'm trying to heal, and how are those things, what's the interplay there, am I an anxiously attached person who keeps chasing after people who are not really available for any number of reasons? And if so, let me take a real hard look at that. Let me hit the pause button and see if I can do some work to go back to what I always call the original wounds, those childhood wounds where maybe we felt for whatever reason that we weren't loved. That was certainly how I interpreted like what was happening between me and my mother when I was a kid, when I was a teenager and a young adult. I really thought she didn't love me. And if my own mother couldn't love me, then there must be something broken inside of me. And when I left my family of origin and went out in the world and, started having relationships of my own, that tremendous self-doubt I had, it kept showing up everywhere. So I would chase after people who were not so available emotionally or otherwise. And then I would play it out, and I would think, well, if I can just show them like how amazing I am. If I can just be the perfect partner, if I can have like no needs and just focus on them and show up for them in all the ways that they are looking for, then I'll feel they'll love me, right? They'll love me, and then I'll get that happy ending, and then I'll be healed and I'll feel better and I'll be happy. Well, it just, didn't go too well. And I did it more than once. And that is why I was able to write the essay this week that I wrote. You can't really write from inside an experience you haven't lived. And so a lot of the actual, like what it's like day to day when you are an anxiously attached person involved with someone who is, insecurely attached, or like avoidant, or avoidant dismissive, or avoidant fearful. The experience is so painful because you are constantly second guessing yourself, and you are, you're chasing, you're not really being yourself. You're being this version of yourself that you think they want, and that you believe if you can just be this version of yourself, then you'll also get what you want. But you're not just showing up as you with all of your beautiful, amazing qualities and all of your quirks and all of your challenging things that, we all have them, right? You're not in that space of like, this is who I am, and I know that I'm safe. I'm just gonna like show you who I am, and I want you to show me who you are, and then we'll figure out together whether this can work. That's not where your head is at. Your head is at, how do I, what do I need to do here to get the outcome that I'm looking for? And what does this person need from me? And how do I show up as that? And it's exhausting, and you're constantly second guessing yourself. There's no room for mistakes. I was talking about, like, you start making up stories in your head about why you're being treated this way. Like if the person is not being responsive, or they leave you on red. That was one of the examples I gave. Or, you're having a conversation, but they're just giving you like one syllable grunts as responses, or they look bored, or that whatever it is, you're constantly like a detective looking for signs, trying to figure out, am I safe? Am I not safe? Am I loved? Am I not loved? Is this person into this, or are they not into it? And it's just, it's so triggering for someone who has that anxious attachment style. And then the more that you look for that reassurance, the less likely you are to get it, because the either, avoidant or avoidant fearful partner is going to be running in the other direction. And the more you chase, the further, the faster they run, generally speaking. And then once in a while, they'll turn around. This is where it gets really, extra exhausting and miserable. They'll turn around and they'll extend themselves to you, or they'll be kind to you, or they will, because some part of them, some deep part of them probably really does want to feel loved at some point and to feel that connection, but it's usually fleeting. And what happens for the anxiously attached person is they live for these crumbs. They live for these little crumbs of evidence that this person cares about me, this person loves me, things are going to get better here. If I can just hold on, if I can just love them more, if I can just be a little more, breezy and a little less needy, if I can, you can spin yourself into a real state, trying to be a million different things, but not yourself. And so eventually it's not, you're gonna peter out, because it's too much. And beyond that, there's also rage that boils underneath this kind of interaction, because there's some part of you that is just crying out to be loved. And when someone continues to be cruel or thoughtless or unkind or uninterested, eventually, there's that hurt kid in you is going to come to the surface, and you never know what that's going to look like. It might look like pain, and it might look like hurt, but it might look like rage. Rage is just covered over pain. And so it doesn't mean you don't have to be responsible about the way you express it, but I'm just saying that, generally if someone is in rage, it's because somewhere deep inside there, they're feeling incredibly hurt or rejected or whatever it is, insecure. And so these interactions are painful for both sides of the equation, but they're really common because of the other part of the thing I was talking about with the repetition compulsion and this idea that if only we can heal what is unhealed in the present, it will fix that original wound from the past. And it just does not work. What does work, certainly for so many people, talk therapy, finding a really, really good therapist. And you have to remind yourself that, like every field in life, there are great therapists and there are not so great therapists. There are great yoga teachers, there are not so great. You've got to vet. And especially when we're talking about sharing with someone sort of the deepest, most painful things that you've been through, you want to feel like, yeah, I can really work with this person. They're going to challenge me. They're going to help me. They're going to surprise me. We're going to get into a process here together. You want to feel that. But talk therapy can be incredibly helpful, certainly helped me in my own life. And part of what we talk about in the yoga practice is this idea of svadhyaya, which is a self-study. Knowing yourself, and that's really what I'm talking about here. It's what I was talking about in the essay. It's what I'm talking about in this conversation, is understanding yourself, having as much information as you can about what is driving you. And that's not just sort of like this navel gazing, it's so that you can be an accountable person in the world. There are so many people who don't ever reflect on what is happening with me. And these people, they're lashing out all over the place, and it's not easy. And I'll tell you, I miss my mother every minute of every day. It is just a gaping hole of grief, not having her anymore. But she was so difficult. She was the kind of person, as much as I loved her, she could never be wrong. I think I got one apology from her in my whole life. She just wasn't one to have difficult conversations or reflect on her behavior, which was sometimes incredibly hurtful. My mom was an alcoholic, and I'll touch on that for a minute too. Growing up in an alcoholic household, or a household that has a lot of uncertainty for any reason, can absolutely create somebody with an anxious attachment style. And the reason is you don't know what you're going to get from day to day. You don't know if there's going to be love and fun and joy, or if there's going to be rage and abuse and fear. You don't know what you're going to get. And so you're constantly watching. And people who grew up in that kind of uncertainty, with that kind of either like alcoholism in the house or abuse in the house, rage, like people with a flash temper, probably are, grow to be those people who know how to read a room. They walk into a room and they're constantly looking for, am I safe? Is there, are there threats here? If there are threats, where are they coming from? Is there any way for me to disarm them? And disarming them might look like, trying to charm someone, or trying to appease someone, or trying to become invisible, or that whole, the fawning, constantly asking are you okay? Are you mad at me? And that's why I named the essay this week, Are You Mad at Me? If you find yourself in a relationship with someone and you're asking that question a lot, really good moment to just step way back and get yourself some help. And talk therapy, I'm not a zealot in any direction. I don't think we're robots here and there's a formula that's going to work for everyone. I think every person's job is to try to figure out what is the formula that I need to heal, because then you're going to be able to show up in the world with the best you have to offer, and the world needs all of us to show up with the best we have to offer. It's very clear. All you have to do is look around. So if talk therapy isn't enough, I do think I can speak to my own experience with that. I found talk therapy to be incredibly helpful at identifying my triggers and places where I still had healing to do. It was brilliant for that, being able to figure out oh yeah, okay, so in my world and in my life, and you have your own history, right? Everyone that I knew and loved disappeared when I was 4. Not permanently. Some people, my grandmother died, but everyone disappeared. And so, it's good for me to know I have a huge fear of abandonment. And I learned that the painful way, when I went out into the world and I started having relationships with people, and I realized my worst nightmare is being left. And so I would tolerate almost anything else. That's not it. That's not a healthy relationship. I'm going to tolerate anything but being left. No, thank you. I think we can do better than that, right? But if you're not aware that this is what's going on underneath the surface, and that's why self-study is really powerful. Understanding what is driving me, what's scaring me, and where do I still have places that I feel tremendous doubt. And that's what happens when your primary caregivers are unable to consistently show up with love. It's just natural. You start to doubt whether you're lovable, and I'm not talking, I want to be really careful in case there are parents listening. No one gets everything right 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's fine to make mistakes. It's fine to not, get it all together all the time. What I consider loving parenting is being able to look your child in the eye and say, hey, you know what? I really blew that. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry if you felt hurt or scared or whatever it is. Just being able to, talk openly and apologize is beautiful. Obviously, if you have difficulty regulating your nervous system or you have rage problems, that is something you definitely want to get help, right away. If you have children in the mix and, they're scared, you really, really want to get help right away on that. And there are so many beautiful modalities, right? So if talk therapy isn't it, trauma is another thing that really wreaks a lot of havoc for people. We know this, not a surprise. But there's EMDR, they're tapping. There are all these different ways to work with your nervous system and bring yourself back to center and bring yourself back to the present moment and remind yourself that whatever's happened in the past, you have tools now. You are now the grown-up in charge. And all those younger versions, this is my belief anyway, all those younger versions of ourselves are, they're still alive and well in us somewhere. I definitely believe that the 4-year-old version of me, that really scared little kid who had this experience of everyone kind of disappearing, she still lives inside me. I know because she shows up sometimes. Things happen, there'll be circumstances, and then suddenly I can feel her running through the halls, in a panic. And the fact that I have a relationship with that younger version of myself, that kid version of myself, is incredibly helpful. I know how to soothe her. I know how to say hey, I hear you. I hear you in there, and I can feel you, and it's okay. We are safe. You are safe. We are safe. I'm the grown-up in charge now, and I am not going to be reckless with this heart that we share or with our time. We are not going to be spending time with people who are unkind or disrespectful or cruel. We're not doing that. You don't have to worry. You can relax and finger paint. I've got this. My 13-year-old self, my 16-year-old self, I have a relationship with these younger versions of me. And I am very happy to reassure them that I'm not tolerating any, nonsense. We're too old for that. So, you can really do a lot of beautiful work and any of those places inside of you that are still crying out for some attention. But if you're not listening, if you aren't paying attention, if you aren't hearing that call, it's going to get louder. You're going to find yourself in like more and more difficult situations and probably compounding your pain. That's the part of it that starts to concern me for people, is that if you're unaware of what's driving you, and you as an anxiously attached person or insecurely attached in any of the different ways keep seeking out people who are not available to be kind to you, what happens is you're compounding that pain, and it's like a scientist who alters the results because they're walking in with a suspected hypothesis, right? They think they already know how this experiment is going to go, and so they're coloring the results because they're walking in with that, with that feeling or that idea, and they're not seeing things clearly and with curiosity. They're not open. They've already got like a mindset. We all do that. If you think that it's unsafe to be close to people, people are going to feel that. They're going to feel that distrust or that fear or that insecurity. And one of the things that is so empowering and that really feels great is being able to be responsible for your own stuff. It isn't anybody else's responsibility that I grew up thinking my mom didn't love me. Like, that's my work. That's my stuff to deal with. It isn't anybody else's fault that, my grandmother died when I was 4 and my mom couldn't deal for a little while and she left me at a farm with a friend of hers I didn't know. Like, there's no one in my current life whose fault that is. That's just what happened, all those years ago. So if I have any current issues because of things that happened way in my past, those issues are my responsibility to handle and to figure out so that I can show up in relationships with the best I have to offer, and with trust and with curiosity and with openness. And being able to, my feeling as a human being now is I will extend trust to people until they give me a reason not to. I want to walk into anything, any friendship, anything with like an open heart, and just joy. And I really want to get to know who this person is and see them clearly. And I find human beings so fascinating. I really do. I love understanding what is driving someone, and I love having those deep conversations and, peeling the layers back and just like really understanding like, oh, you have this pain, or you have this doubt, or these things happened. And of course they created this fear, like I totally understand. And just being able to connect with people on that level, I love it. It's a joy for me, to be able to meet people there. And to also, when someone else is able to do that, it's so comforting, it's such a healing experience when no one's trying to fix you or tell you that what happened is, oh, everything happens for a reason. Like, none of that, just when people are able to listen and empathize, it's so beautiful. And there are people, and certainly the people that have sort of the avoidant, fearful attachment style, it is terrifying for them. Intimacy, relationships, terrifying. The ability to trust and to open, it's so hard. And that's painful to, that's got to be painful to live. And I think that, for people like my mom, who would not have the hard conversations, who would never look at their own behavior and their own participation in a situation and why it was the way that it was, or never be able to say, I can recognize that what I did hurt you and I'm really sorry. People that can't do that are not available for genuine intimacy, being able to give and receive apologies openly is such a key part of being able to be in a healthy relationship, because everyone's going to make mistakes. We're all going to make mistakes. And so just being able to say like, hey, I really blew that. Like, I'm so sorry. I did not show up for you the way that I want to be showing up for you. And I'm so sorry. I know why you're hurt. I know why you're disappointed. I know why you're angry. And I just want you to know that, like, I really am sorry, and I'm really thinking about like what went wrong inside of me, that's the way that I showed up, and I promise you it won't happen again. And then you have to follow through, because the best apology is changed behavior. And I will say that, for the rest of my life, the best apology is changed behavior. I'm sorry is easy to say. We can all say it. A lot of people, well, I can't say we can all say it. A lot of people can't even do that part. But saying the words for, many people is not the issue. Changing the behavior, that's when an apology is heartfelt, meaningful, and has a lasting effect. And you can then trust and relax. So there are a lot of components to understanding yourself and having compassion for yourself and patience with yourself. And I'm a big fan of let me figure out from all the different schools of thought that I can, how to rewire my system in the places that it needs to be rewired. I can tell you today, the essay that I wrote because I spent so many years in that state of mind in relationships with people where I was beating myself up or second guessing myself, or, if I didn't hear back from somebody, worrying, did I upset them? I got to replay the last conversation we had. Was everything okay? I thought we had a nice lunch. Did we have a good lunch? I think we did. You drive yourself absolutely bonkers if you've got to spend your present thinking about, replaying what happened 3 days ago, or trying to figure out why somebody's behaving the way that they're behaving, or taking somebody else's attachment style personally. It's like, people are who they are. Not everybody's going to do this work that I'm describing, to really think about how they're showing up in relation to other people, and to try to figure out what kind of help do I need to heal the places where I have a lot of self-doubt or a lot of just old heartbreak, what do I need to do in order to heal that, to really give that my kind attention. There are a lot of people who aren't going to do that work. They're just going to spend the rest of their lives lashing out. And you may know people like that. And, I think it was one of the, I don't think it was, I know it was one of the biggest heartbreaks of my life, was just the relationship that I had with my mom, and the ways she was unable to get in there and have these kinds of conversations. That caused at least as much, if not more, difficulty than the things that happened along the way. And those were, a lot of them, really painful. But the inability to say hey, I know that you were really hurt or scared, or I know that I scared you, and I'm really sorry. The inability to do that is also the inability to have the kind of intimacy that we could have had. Thankfully, we got there in the last few weeks of her life when she was literally on her deathbed. But you don't want to wait that long. You don't want to wait till you're on your deathbed to heal the relationships in your life, the important relationships in your life. And you also want to set yourself up to have the most meaningful relationships that you possibly can. I treasure the people in my life. I have, two of my closest girlfriends I've known since high school. We went to college together. These women, I don't know what I would do without them. They're sisters. I love them. And we've been through everything together. And I always think about how am I showing up, and am I loving them the way that they really deserve to be loved? And do they know how much I love them every day? And all the people in my life. My children, obviously so much healing. If you're someone who has children, obviously not everyone has children or wants children, which is please, if you don't want children, definitely don't have them, because it's a lot of work. There is no doubt. But they're most important people in my life. And I would, of all the things that have inspired me to be the best possible person I can be, it's them, And so just to really take a beat, and if you read the essay and you related a lot, either from your past experiences, maybe you've healed from and grown, or from your current experiences. And somebody wrote in the comments, I was cringing a little, because I've done this even in my friendships. It's there's no need to cringe. I mean, we've all done it. We've all been in those relationships where the power dynamic feels weird, or we're worried about how, other people are experiencing us or thinking about us, or it's everyone's been through that. Everyone's been there. That's why it was relatable, because everyone has had those experiences where they're looking at their phone, and why isn't this person texting me back? And they can see that I've texted them. I know that they've looked at their phone. Why aren't all of that stuff that we can do to ourselves? Or, oh, I can't believe I said that thing. Why did I say that? That was, just the berating yourself, or the, just worrying or stressing about a million things that really, in a healthy relationship, you would not be expending that kind of energy. You just wouldn't. You wouldn't be worrying all the time. That's not a sign of a healthy relationship. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on is sometimes we're lying to ourselves. We're trying to excuse somebody else's unkind treatment of us. We're making it, we're making up stories in our heads to make that somehow be okay. They're behaving this way because, this horrible thing happened in their childhood. Hey, listen, horrible things happened in most of our childhoods, okay? No one gets a free pass. For me, if someone is over 25, I'll say 26, because that's when most people's frontal lobe is fully online. At a certain point, you are responsible for your behavior. Whatever happened when you were a kid, it's on you now if you're a grown-up, But that's what sometimes we're doing if we're anxiously attached and, we've decided this is the person. This person is the person for me. All evidence to the contrary, but this is the person I've decided, this is it. And if only I could get them to love me, I can see, we can be so happy, if only. That if only is so dangerous, because a lot of the time, the end of that sentence is really, if you're honest about it, if only they were a completely different person. Things could be great if only this person was someone else. I mean, that's not going to happen. And that lying to yourself, or that excusing poor behavior, poor treatment, is really damaging. It hurts your heart. It hurts that little kid in you that's already been hurt. It just throws a little more salt on the wound, because you, as the grown-up, are now allowing it to happen again. You're now choosing people who are going to be cruel. And, that's a groove. In yoga, we call them samskaras. That's a groove you want to get out of. You want to create a new groove, and start heading toward people who can recognize you for the incredible gift that you are. And I mean that so genuinely. It's each one of us, we're never going to exist again. We've never existed before, and we're never going to exist again. And all the things that have happened in your life, the really painful things, the confusing things, the things that just were not okay, the beautiful things, the amazing things, all of it has, coalesced to create this person that is you. And you are precious and amazing, and you have something to offer to this world that only you can, because nobody else has been through exactly what you've been through at the exact moments in time that you were, moved through these things. No one else has had the same exact stuff to overcome, the same things to grow from, or to, integrate, to heal from. I mean, each one of us has a perspective that is unique and important, and you're not here to lie to yourself and convince yourself that it's okay for other people to treat you badly. You're not here to make excuses for that. You're not here to tell yourself that it's really okay because they didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah. That's not the job. And also, like, accepting apologies that are never extended. And I did that a lot with my mom. I mean, I'm going to just throw in the one sort of like curveball here, which is when you have a really close person in your life who is impossible. My mother was impossible, much as I loved her and miss her. She was so difficult because she was not going to be accountable and she wasn't going to have these kinds of conversations. I still wanted her in my life. For me, somehow or another, eventually, not when I was a kid, but as I got older, I realized it's like her 13-year-old self is running the show a lot of the time. Her dad died when she was 13, and I think she got a little stuck there. The trauma, I just think her emotional growth was a little bit stunted. And when I could look at my mother, and it's my mother, like I didn't want to not have her in my life. So I made concessions for her that I would not make for anyone else. Because I just, not having her in my life was worse than having her in my life. And now that she's gone, I can definitely say that was correct. But that doesn't mean she didn't drive me nuts. And anyone who's known me for a long time, I mean, they have heard about my mom, because I struggled with her. I mean, royally, it was a royal struggle. And kind of funny that that's the word I chose because everyone called her the queen, everyone in her life. It was a struggle. But for her, I was willing to be in that struggle and to accept apologies she never extended in my direction until the very end of her life. I was willing to hang in there. There were times, I moved 3,000 miles away. I had to have boundaries and take care of myself, but I managed to figure out how can I be in this relationship with her and keep my heart safe. And it's just too bad that that's like how I had to do it. And whichever side of the equation that you're on here, like just to know that what you can be responsible for is what's happening inside of you, and then how you show up in the world with that. So I really hope that this talk was helpful. There's a lot of great information about attachment styles. I did a sort of short version here, but there's a book called Attached, which I really like a lot. And there's a lot of information out there. A lot of people doing great work on attachment styles, and just a really good piece of information to factor in to what's happening with you in the relationships in your life, and if there are places that you might want to make some shifts. I definitely hope you don't spend a lot of time with people who make you feel miserable and cause you to doubt your own lovability, your own lovable self. Life's really too short for too much of that, and I'm speaking to you as someone who did that for far too long, with far too many different, not just romantic relationships but friendships. Just like, no, let's not do that anymore. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to being with you again soon. Bye for now.